So, picture this a fancy graduation dinner. Everyone dressed to the nines, the smell of expensive wine in the air, and me thinking, tonight's about celebrating my brother. But wait, things go sideways fast. My mom's sneer hits before the first toast. And suddenly, I'm not just excluded, I'm humiliated. And here's the kicker by the end of the night. I uncover a secret, a financial bombshell that flips everything upside down. Trust me, this is not your usual family drama. The restaurant smelled like money old, polished, fancy money, leather chairs, dark mahogany, a faint scent of lilies that tried too hard to cover the staleness of the place. Menus without prices, tuxedoed waiters who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion shoot. Everything screaming wealth and refinement. My mother, Lucy, had been practically vibrating with excitement for weeks. Only the best for Lucas, she'd announced over and over, as if it were a mantra. He was the first in the family to do something of significance, she said. And me, I remembered standing in my workshop, sanding an antique oak table, listening to her words float in the dusty air. Something of significance. I hadn't said anything then. Just kept my hands moving, the rhythm of the sandpaper shielding me from the passive-aggressive barbs I was used to. I was the one with the calloused hands, the one who smelled like varnish and sawdust, the one who had chosen my own path instead of a college degree. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was Lucas's night. I scrubbed the grime from under my nails until my skin was raw and washed the varnish off my hands. I even wore a silk dress that cost more than my first set of power tools. I wanted to be proud. I wanted to belong. I wanted, just for a few hours, to fit into the world my mother inhabited so effortlessly. As I walked toward the private alcove she had reserved, I spotted them. Lucy was radiant, a shimmering silver gown clinging perfectly, holding court like a queen. Joseph, my father, looked slightly uncomfortable in his stiff collar, nodding along to whatever she said, probably trying to blend in. And Lucas, flushed and triumphant, sat at the head of the table, the man of the hour. His girlfriend Sarah, quiet and wide-eyed, sat beside him, looking like she hadn't quite learned how to navigate this world of affluence. I forced a smile as I approached, clutching the graduation card and the check I had tucked inside, feeling every ounce of tension coil in my chest. "Hey everyone," I said, my voice too loud in the hushed room. "Sorry I'm a little late, traffic from the workshop." And then I stopped. I froze. There were 4 chairs, 4 settings, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, napkins folded so perfectly it hurt to look at them. Just 4. And I was standing at the edge, my heart thudding. Maybe it was a mistake, I thought. Maybe the waiter moved a chair. But no. Lucy didn't even glance at me. She was inspecting her manicure, utterly indifferent. "Don't bother, Amelia," she said, like she'd sliced through the air with a diamond cutter. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean? We reserved the main table for the family, the achievers," she said, cold and precise. "This is a celebration of higher education." Her eyes flicked over my hands, lingering on phantom sawdust she imagined still there. "You didn't go to college. You don't belong at the main table." The silence that followed was suffocating. My chest felt tight, my stomach twisted. Joseph coughed, pretending to find the tablecloth fascinating. Lucas smirked, casually suggesting I grab a burger at the bar. and Sarah, poor Sarah, shrank back, terrified by the tension. I felt humiliated, exposed, and furious all at once, but I stayed quiet. I had learned long ago that screaming didn't help, not with Lucy, not when her world was built on control and appearances. So I stepped back, letting the scene unfold, noting every detail, every expression. This was my family, luxurious, cruel, and entirely unrecognizable to me. And in that moment, as the muffled chatter of other diners floated past, I realized that no amount of silk dresses or polished nails could make me belong to a table that had never truly wanted me. My hands, calloused and strong, were proof of a life I had built myself, not one handed to me on a silver platter. Tonight was about Lucas. Yes, but it was also a reminder I had always been on the outside, and somehow I was still standing. I froze, standing at the edge of the table, my eyes darting from Lucy to Joseph to Lucas, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. 4 chairs, 4 settings. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. "Oh," I said, my smile faltering, a cold prickle crawling up my neck. "Looks like you missed a setting. Let me just flag down the waiter." I raised my hand, trying to catch someone's attention, but Lucy's voice cut through the air like a razor. "Don't bother, Amelia," she said, not even looking at me. She was inspecting her manicure, calm, indifferent, deliberate. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice a little louder than I intended. My throat was dry, my hands slightly trembling. "I mean," she finally looked at me, her eyes cold, almost predatory. "We reserved the main table for the family, the achievers. This is a celebration of higher education, darling. You didn't go to college. You don't belong at the main table. It wouldn't be appropriate." I felt the words like a punch. Wait, what? Appropriate? My brain struggled to process the sheer absurdity. I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came. My stomach churned, my chest tight. It was worse than exclusion. It was public humiliation. I glanced around. Other diners were looking, curious, puzzled. I could feel their stares like tiny pinpricks, each one piercing my composure. "Now, Amelia," Joseph said, coughing, trying to diffuse the tension or maybe just avoid making a scene himself. "Don't make a scene. Your mother just wants everything to be perfect for Lucas." I looked at Lucas, my little brother, the golden boy, the one I had bought his first car for. He swirled the water in his glass, smirking. "I mean, Mel," he said, almost casually. "It's kind of an exclusive vibe tonight, academic elite and all that. You can probably grab a burger at the bar or something. We can catch up after." Wait, what did he just say that my own brother, my blood? The betrayal hit harder than any insult I had ever received. It was like being punched, kicked, and laughed at all at once. I could feel my face heating up, the raw sting of shame and anger swirling in a tight, unrelenting knot. I had spent the entire evening preparing, dressing, wanting to belong, and here I was, treated like some intruder, like someone beneath notice. "Yes," Lucy said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand, her smile returning instantly, bright and cruel. "Go sit over there. We'll wave if we need anything." Her eyes never left her own reflection in a nearby polished surface. She was perfect. She was untouchable, and I was left standing, a ghost at my own brother's celebration. I looked at the waiter who had just approached. expecting him to intervene, to clarify, to offer a chair. But no, he glanced nervously at Lucy, then back at me. My hands clenched, my jaw tightened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to do something, anything, to reclaim a shred of dignity. I swallowed hard, forcing my emotions down. You don't cry here. Not now. Not in front of them. I felt the familiar burn of anger building, slow and hot behind my ribs. This wasn't just about tonight. This was decades of subtle, calculated dismissal of being the practical one, the sturdy one, the one who had chosen a path of labor and skill over diplomas and degrees, the one who had quietly provided, who had scraped, worked, built, and earned, while Lucy had perfected her charm and entitlement. And now, in the room filled with quiet murmurs and raised eyebrows, all of it was laid bare, framed as my inadequacy. I wanted to make a scene. I wanted to scream, to throw the card and the check at her face, to declare every injustice. But I didn't. I simply stepped back, hands limp at my sides, shoulders tight. I let her have the stage. Let Lucas have the smug smile. Let Joseph hide behind polite distraction. I stayed silent, but my mind was racing, calculating, replaying every slight, every word, every moment of disregard. Each one a piece of the puzzle, each one a reminder that this family, this perfect, polished, elite family had never truly seen me. I felt the eyes of other diners, their curiosity prickling, their interest, a faint undercurrent of tension rippling through the room. I could feel the air tighten, the acoustics carrying the faintest shift in energy. It was humiliating, and yet there was a strange clarity in the center of my humiliation, a spark I couldn't ignore. I had spent years working with my hands, building, restoring, creating. I knew value, I knew labor, I knew what real effort felt like. And here they were measuring worth with degrees and social airs, unaware of the real foundation beneath it all. I clenched my fists subtly, feeling a surge of resolve, a quiet, simmering fire. "We'll wave if we need anything," she had said. Her words were meant to mock, to diminish, to erase me from the night. But they did the opposite. In that moment, I saw clearly what had been hidden beneath Lucy's shimmering exterior, beneath Lucas's casual smirk, beneath Joseph's distracted compliance. I understood the dynamic, the calculation, the entitlement. I saw the way they treated success, how they measured achievement, and, more importantly, I realized that the scales had always been tipped, and it was time I learned exactly where I stood and where they truly were. I turned slightly, my spine straightening, my shoulders set. My face betrayed none of the fire inside, but my mind was already racing, plotting, calculating. I had been humiliated, yes, publicly, brutally, but I was not broken. And as I glanced at the empty seat, at the empty setting that had been deliberately denied to me, I felt a strange sense of purpose coil like a spring inside me. This wasn't just exclusion, it was a challenge, and I was ready to accept it in my own way, on my own terms. I didn't argue. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't hand over my card to cover the extravagant wine Lucy had ordered. Instead, I walked over to the bar, feeling the eyes of the staff and a few curious diners follow me, but I ignored them. I perched on a stool, my back straight, hands folded in my lap, trying to steady the pulse of adrenaline racing through me. I ordered sparkling water, not a burger, Not anything indulgent. Just water. Plain. Steadying. Grounding. From my vantage point, I could see everything. Lucy, glowing in her silver gown, gesturing with the wine glass like a queen. Joseph, awkward in his collar, nodding along to whatever charm Lucy was performing. Lucas, smug, swirling his water, occasionally laughing at some joke I couldn't hear. And Sarah, looking tense, eyes darting between the family members like she was watching a tightrope act. The caviar arrived, glistening like little jewels on silver platters. 2 bottles of that 2005 vintage Lucy loved, poured into crystal flutes. The waiter hovered, attentive, waiting for the person who was supposed to pay, and all the while, I sat, a silent observer. My heart beat steadily now, the initial shock giving way to something else, a quiet, simmering awareness. This was absurd, entirely absurd, and yet here I was, the one expected to just smile and accept the scene. The smells of the restaurant hit me differently from before. Leather, mahogany, the faint trace of lilies, rich, overdone, trying to mask staleness, and it made me think. Everything Lucy valued was on display. Everything she thought defined success. And I was outside it, and yet, in some strange way, I felt a sharp clarity. They didn't get it. They didn't see me, but they also didn't see the real work, the real effort, the foundation that had always supported their world. I sipped my water, letting the cool liquid calm the heat rising in my chest. I watched the gestures, the laughter, the subtle performances, each toast, each sip, each carefully curated comment was a show. And I was the outsider, the one cast out for not having a degree, not fitting the mold, not wearing the crown of academic approval. My hands itched to act, to react, to make them pay attention. But I stayed put, calm, calculating, observing. It was almost like a meditation. I noted the contrast between my restraint and their indulgence. The contrast was bitter and satisfying in a way I couldn't explain. And then I thought about the credit card authorization I had signed. The fact that I knew the prices of the wine, of the caviar, of every single indulgence they were consuming, believing I would cover it. The realization twisted inside me like a blade. They had expected me to quietly bankroll their performance while being publicly dismissed. I smiled, just slightly, a small, private acknowledgement of the ridiculousness of it all. The power dynamic was clear. They thought they held it. They didn't. Not yet. I focused on the sensory details, the soft jazz from the live trio, the gentle clink of silver cutlery, the glimmer of candlelight on the glassware. I let the details anchor me, let them remind me I was grounded, alert, and in control of what mattered most, myself. I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to feed their illusion. Not tonight. Not ever again. Time passed. They laughed. They toasted. They indulged in the luxury of a life I had built, not inherited. And yet I watched it all, silent but present, letting the weight of it sink in. The unfairness, the absurdity, the public slight, all of it became fuel. Each gesture of entitlement, each smirk of superiority was a note in the composition of a plan I hadn't fully revealed yet. I let out a quiet breath, letting the tension ebb just enough to observe calmly, letting the simmering anger settle into something sharper, something deliberate. I was the one with clarity. I was the one outside their fragile little bubble. And from this stool at the bar, with my water untouched, I realized something powerful. I didn't need their approval, their accolades, or their acceptance to see the truth. I was ready for what came next. Back in the quiet of my own home, the adrenaline from the restaurant still thrumming through me, I realized something. I couldn't let this go. Not tonight. Not ever. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat of my truck and let it light up with messages. All urgent, demanding, insistent. Lucas, Mom, Dad. They were panicking, assuming I'd snap back into the role they'd always imposed on me, the obedient daughter, the fixer, the one who paid the bills, cleaned up the messes, smoothed over their illusions. I didn't answer. I just stared, letting the frustration and rage settle into something sharp, precise. Once inside my workshop, the familiar smell of sawdust and linseed oil grounded me. I sat at my desk, the heavy oak beneath my hands, my tools neatly organized in drawers I knew by memory. My hands were steady now, even though my mind raced. The first step was to see the numbers, to understand the full scope. I opened my laptop, logged into my online banking portal, and began digging. The joint account Joseph and I had for household expenses, the one I thought was a shared safety net, was the first place I started. Easy enough. Freeze, click, done. That part was simple, but I knew this was just the surface. I pulled up my credit history next, expecting to see the usual: my truck payments, business loans, mortgage, normal debt. But then, there it was. A platinum rewards card, opened 18 months ago, balanced $24,500. My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize it. I hadn't opened it. I clicked on the transaction history. Heart hammering, and my breath caught. Sephora, $450. Nordstrom, $1,200. The Ritz-Carlton Spa, $800. Transfers to Lucas's Cash App, $2,000. To Lucas's Venmo, $1,500. I leaned back, the leather chair creaking under me, and felt a cold fury tighten in my chest. Identity theft. My own mother had used my social security number. Had she known it by heart? It had to be. Every charge, every transaction screamed her indulgence, her vanity, her sense of entitlement on my dime. I sat there a moment, trying to breathe, trying to process. And then the tuition checks. 4 years of them, written by me, every semester. $12,000 a pop, sent to Joseph under the guise of paying the university directly. I pulled up the images of the checks from my bank archive paid to the order of Joseph and Lucy Miller. Endorsement on the back deposit only into an account ending in 4490. My pulse accelerated. That account wasn't the university. It wasn't the joint account I had access to. It was private, hidden. And the money had never gone to pay for Lucas's tuition. I whispered, barely audible to the empty room. They didn't pay the school. My mind raced. I needed concrete evidence, admissible proof. I grabbed the power of attorney form Joseph had signed 3 years ago after his heart scare. He'd never revoked it. It gave me legal authority to access his financial records. This wasn't guesswork anymore. This was a plan taking shape. The bank visit felt like walking into the belly of the beast. I chose the main branch downtown, not the one where everyone knew us. I carried my binder of documents, my flannel shirt, and work boots, no silk dresses tonight. David, the young banker, looked at the papers, glanced at me, then back at the documents. Everything seems in order. Ms. Miller, he said. I told him exactly what I needed statements for, account 4490 going back 4 years. Any student loans associated with Joseph or Lucas, co-signed by this account. He typed, paused, frowned, and then nodded. The statements printed 4 Parent Plus loans totaling $120,000. My knees nearly buckled. I had given them nearly $100,000 in checks over 4 years, and they had pocketed it, taken out loans in Joseph's name anyway. They were swimming in debt, mismanaging my money, living on my work. Every instinct in me told me to scream, but I didn't. I took the stack, heavy and damning, back to my workshop. Back at my desk, the paper stack looked like a loaded weapon. I highlighted the Vegas trip, $4,000 that had supposedly been for textbooks. The tires on the gravel outside crunched, and I didn't look up. I knew who it was. Lucy, storming in like a scene from some absurd drama, followed by a pale Joseph and a sullen Lucas. You ungrateful, spiteful little she started, and I didn't flinch. Her words fell flat against the weight of evidence sitting on my desk. She lunged closer, demanding explanations, threats, manipulation. But I stayed seated. My hands hovered over the papers, calm, precise. I let her voice, the frantic Lucas, and Joseph's weak protests wash over me. They thought they held the power. They didn't, not anymore. I held the proof. Every transaction, every misused check, every fraudulent credit card in my hand. It was irrefutable. I let my eyes flicker over the details again, memorizing patterns, noting dates and amounts. I wasn't just discovering betrayal. I was uncovering decades of exploitation, calculated and deliberate. And for the first time, I felt not panic, not fear, but control. My mind worked in cold, methodical waves. Each step I had taken, the frozen joint account, the bank statements, the power of attorney, the verification of the tuition records was deliberate. A series of moves in a game they thought they controlled. And now, with the evidence laid out, the weight of their misdeeds glaring from the page, I began to map out the next moves. Legal authority, proof of fraud, the undeniable paper trail that would flip the power dynamic completely. I leaned back, letting the adrenaline mix with a strange exhilaration. They had expected compliance. They had expected me to pay for their indulgences, to stay silent, to accept humiliation as the cost of their performance. Instead, I was poised to act, not in anger, but in clarity. The shock of discovery had transformed into calculated awareness, and the simmering sense of injustice was crystallizing into empowerment. Every fraudulent charge, every misdirected check, every misused loan was a thread I could pull, and I intended to unravel the entire tapestry. As I stared at the numbers, the names, the dates, I felt the weight of years of being overlooked, undervalued, dismissed, and exploited begin to lift. I wasn't powerless. I had the tools, the knowledge, the legal authority, and most importantly, the resolve. And with that resolve, the next chapter of this story, one where I was no longer the quiet, practical child, but the orchestrator of truth, began to take shape in my mind. I could almost see it, clear as day, every misdeed laid bare, every lie exposed, every illusion shattered. And for the first time in years, I felt untouchable, anchored by the certainty of what I now knew. The workshop was quiet when they arrived, but the silence quickly turned electric, charged with tension. Lucy stormed in first, her oversized sunglasses perched on her face, trench coat dragging slightly over the floor. Joseph followed, pale, shoulders tight, eyes darting nervously between me and Lucy. Lucas lingered by a workbench, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Clearly uncomfortable, I remained seated at my desk, a fortress of oak and paper between us, the stack of evidence glowing under the soft light from the monitors and the window above. Lucy's voice broke the silence. "You ungrateful, spiteful little, do you have any idea what you did last night? The humiliation. The waiter, he threatened to call the police. I didn't flinch. I didn't stand. I let the weight of the papers on my desk speak before I did. I don't owe anyone anything," I said, my voice calm, measured. The silence that followed was almost painful. Lucy's jaw tightened, her face contorting in disbelief and fury. Joseph's hand hovered over the desk, unsure whether to intervene, unsure how to respond. Lucas glanced down at the floor, visibly shrinking. "I didn't pay your dinner," I continued, my hands resting lightly on the oak surface. "I didn't order your wine, and I didn't cover your extravagances. But what I'm about to show you," I said, letting a brief pause build suspense, "is something you can't deny." Lucy scoffed. "Oh, please." "What now?" More theatrics, I picked up the first sheet, the platinum credit card statement. My finger traced the transactions, each one deliberate, precise. "This," I said, holding it up, "is a credit card opened in my name without my consent. $24,500 in charges, designer clothes, spas, a party, and transfers to Lucas's accounts. You committed identity theft." "Mother." Her sunglasses slipped slightly as her eyes widened. She froze. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, voice shaky, unconvincing. "Really?" I asked, calm, almost conversationally. "Because here's the bank's own paperwork, your signature, the address, the account number, everything. Links to you. Federal fraud, punishable by up to 15 years in prison. You should have thought about that before assuming I would silently bankroll your lifestyle." Joseph made a small, choking sound, his hand clenching the edge of the desk. "Amelia, now, let's not use words like that," he murmured, trying to regain control of the spiraling conversation. I ignored him, moving to the next document, my voice steady, firm. For 4 years, I wrote checks every semester for Lucas's tuition, $12,000 each, to Joseph, to Lucy, supposedly for the university. I paused, letting the words sink in. These checks were never deposited into the university account. They were misused, diverted into accounts I didn't know existed. And yet, you continued to take out Parent Plus loans in Joseph's name, $120,000 in total. You've been stealing from me, living off my work, and hiding it the entire time. Lucas's face went pale. "Mom, Dad," he started, his voice faltering. He looked at Lucy, hoping she would intervene, but she just stared, rigid, incapable of forming a defense. "You think you have power here," I said, letting my gaze sweep across the three of them. "But the truth is, all the control you thought you had was an illusion. I have the evidence. I have the authority. And now, the choice of response is mine." Lucy's voice rose, desperation creeping in. "Amelia, unfreeze the accounts, pay the bills, apologize to Lucas. We are your family. "You can't, family," I echoed softly, almost amused, leaning back in my chair. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't live on borrowed respect and borrowed money. Family doesn't humiliate and exploit the ones who built the foundation they walk on. That's not family. That's entitlement, and you're out of excuses. Joseph opened his mouth, but I cut him off without raising my voice. "I gave you nearly $100,000 over 4 years for Lucas's tuition. Where is it?" He looked down, shuffling his feet. Lucas, too, stared at the floor, silent, shame written across his features. Lucy's eyes darted, seeking any avenue of escape, any ally. But there was none. The proof sat in neat stacks, irrefutable, undeniable. I had the upper hand. Every smirk, every dismissive wave from the restaurant, every instance of past control, they all ended here. Lucy's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You are no longer my daughter. I will write you out of the will. You will be dead to us." I laughed softly, the sound cold and precise. "The will, Mom. Look at these papers." I let my hand hover over the statements. "The evidence. There is nothing there. 0 assets, negative equity. Everything you've built leveraged. Dependent on my work gone. You have nothing to inherit but debt. And now, your power over me gone too." She staggered back, disbelief etched across her features. Joseph swallowed, slack-jawed, realizing the full extent of their mismanagement and my calculated response. Lucas took a small step toward the exit, still hesitant, still unsure. I stood. Finally, the movement deliberate, controlled. My voice remained steady. "You wanted me at the kids' table. Fine. I've built my own table. I've built a life with my hands, with my effort, and at my table. I decide who sits and who doesn't." Lucy's lips trembled, anger mixing with a dawning comprehension that her world, the carefully constructed facade, had been dismantled. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Regaining some composure, "You'll come crawling back when you realize you have no family." I shook my head slowly, letting the finality settle in. I realized last night I had no family at the restaurant. Now, I'm just cleaning up the mess. And that starts here, today. They were silent after that, the weight of the undeniable evidence pressing in, their carefully maintained airs of superiority crumbling. The dynamic had shifted completely. I had remained calm, firm, in control, letting the paper trail, the hard numbers, the undeniable facts speak louder than any words of accusation or pleading. My years of being the silent, practical, overlooked child had culminated in this precise moment of clarity and power. I watched as they processed it, individually and together, a tableau of shock, rage, and helplessness. The three of them, so confident in the illusion of control, had finally been forced to confront reality. And I, Amelia, the tradeswoman, the builder, the one they had thought beneath notice, was standing at the center of it, calm and unwavering, fully in command of the truth and the consequences it brought. Sunday afternoon, the sky was impossibly blue, the breeze gentle, rustling the oak leaves lining the long driveway to the Miller estate. From my truck parked just outside the gate, I could see the white tents, the catered stations, the jazz trio playing soft, pleasant tunes. The clink of glasses and murmurs of the local elite floated across the lawn. Cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Teslas lined the drive, each one a symbol of the world Lucy adored. And at the center of it all, I knew, were Lucy and Lucas, performing their roles perfectly, the suffering mother, the brilliant scholar. I checked my watch. 2 o'clock? Sharp. A black sedan pulled up beside me, and Sarah, my lawyer, stepped out. Sharp in a navy blazer. Behind her, a police cruiser rolled to a stop, an officer nodding silently. I exhaled slowly, smoothing my blazer. Not a dress today, not the silk of pretense, a power suit, work boots, purpose. This wasn't about appearances. This was about authority. Ready? Sarah asked, handing me a thick envelope. More than you know, I replied, stepping out of the truck. Every step up the driveway felt deliberate, measured, echoing faintly against the gravel. Guests turned, whispers starting as heads lifted. Lucy spotted me instantly, her face shifting from gracious hostess to pure venom in a heartbeat. "You weren't supposed to come," she hissed, her voice sharp enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Actually," Sarah interjected, projecting her voice clearly over the murmurs, "this property is under the Miller family trust. Ms. Miller, the sole trustee, is exercising her right to inspect the premises for lease violations." A hush fell over the lawn. Even the jazz trio faltered mid-note. Lease violations. Guests exchanged looks, confused and curious. Lucy's lips parted, trying to form a retort, but the words didn't come. I could see her mind racing, grasping for some way to regain control. I walked past her, straight to the microphone stand the band had been using. I tapped it once. Thump, thump. Silence. Perfect. I took a breath and let my voice carry. "Hello, everyone," I began, conversational, calm, but firm. "I apologize for interrupting, but since we're all gathered here, celebrating Lucas's graduation and my mother's impeccable taste, I thought we should clear up a few misconceptions." Lucy lunged for the microphone cord. "Cut the mic," she screamed, voice cracking. The officer moved instinctively, blocking her path. I ignored her theatrics, holding up the envelope. 7 days ago, I continued. Letting the pause build tension, I discovered something shocking. I was told I didn't belong at the main table because I didn't go to college. I was told my money was good enough to pay for your dinner, but not my presence. Tonight, I'm here to clarify a few things. I pulled out the first document. This is a credit card statement. A platinum visa opened in my name without my consent by Lucy Miller. $24,000 in charges for spas, designer clothes, and even this party. Fraud, identity theft, all in the name of maintaining appearances. Gas rippled across the crowd. Lucy's face went pale, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her oversized sunglasses. "And as for the guest of honor," I said, turning slowly to Lucas, who had shrunk back near the dessert table, his confidence evaporating. "Lucas, come here." He hesitated, inching backward, eyes wide, searching for escape. "This." I held up the transcript from the university, is an official record showing Lucas. Miller has not been enrolled in classes for over 3 semesters. He has been academically suspended for a year and a half. He didn't graduate. That tuition I wrote. The loans my father took out, they've been funding his apartment and his car. A $100,000 lie. The silence was deafening. You could hear the pin drop in the grass. Lucas looked at the ground, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Joseph, frozen, stared at Lucy. Lucy's composure cracked, trembling, tears streaming down her face, but not of remorse. Rage. "You ungrateful, how dare you?" she shrieked. "After everything we did for you, you stole from me." You committed fraud, I said evenly, scanning the crowd. You lied to your friends, your neighbors, everyone here. You don't have a degree to celebrate. Mom, you have a felony? The whispers grew louder. Guests exchanged astonished glances. Lucy flailed, trying to salvage some control. It was for the family. For Lucas. You have plenty of money. Amelia, why shouldn't you share? I smiled faintly. Calm, steady. After what? After I chose a life of honest work? After I refused to play your game of appearances? No. I'm done financing the charade. I nodded towards Sarah, who handed Lucy the eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate the premises, she said clearly. Voice carrying to every corner of the lawn, Lucy collapsed dramatically onto the grass, sobs loud, chaotic, and entirely performative. Lucas stared at the ground, helpless, shrinking further. Joseph just stood, slack-jawed, realizing the full scope of his own inaction, the depth of complicity. The crowd, silent moments ago, began murmuring, stunned, curious, unable to comprehend the scale of deception. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I turned, walking down the driveway. The sound of my heels striking the pavement like a metronome, steady and unbroken. I didn't need to gawk at their humiliation. The point had been made, the message delivered, the evidence undeniable. The power had shifted, entirely and irrevocably. As I walked to my truck, I allowed myself a brief smile, not of malice, but of quiet satisfaction. The facade that had controlled so much of my life was gone, and I, Amelia, had reclaimed not only my dignity but my authority. Today, the main table had changed, and I had built it myself, in truth and consequence, leaving nothing but the reality of their choices in its wake. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Lucy's legal troubles unfolded almost immediately. Federal authorities investigated the identity theft and fraud, and she ended up pleading guilty, agreeing to restitution. Her social standing, once carefully curated and maintained, crumbled overnight. The same people she had used to reinforce her superiority turned away as the scandal made headlines. Lucas, for his part, lost the privileges he had taken for granted, his car repossessed, his off-campus apartment stripped of support, and his social credibility evaporated. He tried reaching out, sending frantic, rambling messages about pressure and fear, but I didn't respond. I blocked his number. He had to face the consequences of his own choices. Joseph was the hardest to watch. He wasn't malicious. He had been willfully blind, complicit in ignorance. Seeing him come to terms with the reality, the fraud, the mismanaged loans, the deception was painful, but it also solidified for me the stark contrast between responsibility and entitlement. He moved into a small apartment downtown, pared down to basics, and while we talk occasionally, the relationship is forever altered. There's an understanding now, but also a clear boundary. And I returned to my workshop, the smell of sawdust and linseed oil grounding me, the quiet hum of machines and tools, a welcome contrast to the chaos I had dismantled. The sun streamed through dusty windows, illuminating the grain of the walnut table I was restoring. My business thrived. Clients who respected my work, my time, and my prices kept the orders coming. I had a waiting list of museums and antique dealers who valued craftsmanship over pretense. The work wasn't easy, but it was honest, and it was mine. Every piece I restored or built was a testament to skill, dedication, and patience. the things that had always mattered more than degrees or appearances. I had my own small house now, fully paid for, not a mansion, but a home built through hard work and integrity, and no one could take that away. The main table I had once been excluded from no longer held sway over me. I realized, quietly and profoundly, that I had never needed their approval. Not for my skills, not for my independence, not for my sense of worth. The validation I had longed for from Lucy and the family was fleeting and conditional. What mattered was the respect I earned from myself and those who truly understood the value of effort. Reflecting on it all, the humiliation, the anger, the careful planning, and the confrontation, I felt a deep sense of empowerment. I had acted decisively, methodically, without letting emotion cloud judgment. The fallout was inevitable, but controlled. I hadn't just exposed deceit, I had reclaimed autonomy, established boundaries, and set a precedent that respect and honesty were non-negotiable in my life. Sometimes, when I sit back in my workshop, hand tracing the smooth surface of a table I've crafted, I let myself smile quietly. The chaos of the past, the manipulations, the lies, the exclusion now feels like a distant storm. What remains is the life I've built, steady and true. I run my own business, make my own decisions, and am surrounded by the tangible results of my work. And in that clarity, I finally understand the main table, the approval, the so-called recognition they were never necessary. I have my own table now, and at it, everyone is welcome as long as they bring honesty, effort, and truth. That is all I have ever needed, and all I will ever need. And that's how it all unfolded. Humiliation turned into empowerment. Deceit met with decisive action, and a life reclaimed on the narrator's own terms. It's a story about resilience, standing your ground, and realizing you don't need anyone else's approval to define your worth. If this story left you as captivated as I was, there are plenty more dramatic, real-life tales to explore. Stick around, and you'll see how ordinary people take extraordinary control of their lives.